I thought everybody was like that. Mm-hmm. I thought every family had instruments and loved music, and you could do this. And a lot of people, guys in the neighborhood, was like, "Oh no, man, can we come over to your house?" That's what life was.
Yeah.
You know, you just made music together.
Hello and welcome to Where the Living Room Used to Be, a podcast about Rhode Island's music scene. Hey everyone, it's James. On this episode, I was lucky enough to meet back up with the one and only Joe Potenza to talk more deeply about his impressive music career. In our conversation, we go back to the start of how various instruments came into his life, the moment he became attached to bass, and who motivated him to play early on. We also cover the many styles of music he's performed over the years, some of the big names he's joined on stage, and we go all the way up to the connection he has with his current band, Evening Sky. Speaking of that, this Jazz Roots Quartet has released another installment of their Plus One series. This one features singer Eden Casteel, and in our interview you'll learn a lot more about the thought behind how this band writes together and with others. Hope you enjoy the episode, and please subscribe to Where the Living Room Used to Be on your favorite podcast app, as I'll be posting some bonus mini episodes with Joe in the coming weeks. Thanks. From what I've seen, you grew up in like a musical family.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you?
Well, there were 6 kids.
Okay.
The oldest sister was significantly older, pre-war.
Yeah.
And I was in utero at her wedding, so there was a big spread.
Oh yeah. Okay.
The last of us, my younger brother is 2 years younger than me, and he was born in 1956.
Yeah.
So there's a big spread from my sister to then the post-war kids when my father came home from the war. My mother was a self-taught piano player.
Okay.
And a really, a stage mother. Just loved to have her kids, and loved to see her kids performing. Or we would put on shows. My father drove truck for a while for a sheet metal company. So he would go on these long hauls up to a project in way upstate New York and be gone for a week. So the entertainment was, because television was, pretty new and almost, the entertainment was, we're going to put on a show. And my mother would play things and then later on we were part of a tap dancing school that my oldest sister had opened because she was a child tap dancing star. Oh, okay. And so we had to be, all of us were in the reviews, and my first time on stage I was 5 years old.
Really? Wow.
In a white satin cowboy suit, singing a novelty song about a kid with his broomstick horse. Yeah. And that was my first gig. Wow. But my mother was the mastermind behind all this stuff. Really? And my father was just like a big supporter. He would, he helped build the scenery. He got us, and anytime we showed anybody showed any interest, or they even thought that there was some interest. Yep. They would, would you like to try an instrument?
Oh, okay.
So my older brother, got fascinated by guitar. We had an older cousin who played guitar in like local clubs and stuff like that. And he was just like the coolest looking guy. He was like the local Elvis kind of guy. Oh, really? And he played guitar, and he was like, he always had he had the hair and stuff, and we all looked up to him. So he kind of took my older brother under his wing. Yeah. Showed him a few chords and that kind of stuff. And then, and my father and mother, would you like an instrument? So my father knew some musicians. There was somebody in the neighborhood who was dating a musician, so he would talk to them and find out what should I get. Yeah, and that's how it would do it. And when I was 9 years old, I got a drum set because I expressed a little bit of interest in playing drums, and I had a toy set. And what he did is he went out and asked this guy, what kind of drum should I get? And I got a set of Ludwigs. Wow. For my, I think that, the used set, and Pop's idea was always, and their idea was, if you get a good instrument, they're going to have a good instrument to play. If they're not into it, you can always resell it and get your money back if it's a good instrument.
Yes, versus getting like this
Right.
like introductory or like
because it was a working class family. He was a single income, and five kids, and so that was the thing. And so my older brother played guitar. My younger brother kind of followed in that. He was starting to play guitar. I tried drums for a little while, wasn't into it. Didn't have the discipline to do the lessons and everything.
Yeah.
So I just kind of let it go. And I remember specifically one night, I was bored. I was a bored 14-year-old walking around the house. Oh, I'm bored. Mm-hmm. I'm bored. My father wanted to watch television on his one night off, probably, and don't bother me. Go find something to do.
Yeah.
And my younger brother had borrowed a bass guitar from some friend of his, and it was sitting behind the couch. So it's like, I can't go in there and bother Pop anymore. So, what's this? And I took it out and I'm messing around with it, plugged it into one of my brother's guitar amps.
Yeah.
And started playing the open strings. And for some reason, I remember I hit the A string and it sounded like something familiar. And I went and got one of the records that I thought this sounded like.
Yep.
And it was a record by Johnny Winter, the Texas blues guy, right?
Yep.
The first tune on the album starts out with a bass riff in the key of A.
Okay.
And as it turned out, I was hitting the A string and thought, hey, this sounds familiar. So I listened to the intro, and of course the record, you got to move the needle again and again and again. And the guy, it starts with A, and then the octave of an A, and then there's a blues, pentatonic blues line that goes down. And I thought, it's just bass there. I bet I could find these notes.
Yeah.
And on that one A string, I found all the notes to that riff. And by the end of the night, when it was time to go to bed, I had learned the intro to that song. But it was all on one string.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know what the other strings were supposed to be tuned to.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
But I knew, I learned that, and it just fascinated me that I was able to hear that stuff and find it on the instrument.
And then play
and then play it. And there was always a piano in the house.
Yeah.
So, not long after that, I found a bass guitar book, and it had an illustration with arrows from the strings to what keys on the piano you tune them to. Okay. So I was able to tune the instrument up.
Yep.
And then play on other strings. And now I'm listening, all the stuff that I was listening to at the time, which was white blues guys. Mm-hmm. And the band, and some Beatles stuff, and early Blood, Sweat, and Tears, and those kinds of things. They all had really involved bass parts. I couldn't play them, but I could find once I figured out that the blue, what a 12-bar blues pattern was about, and where those chords were on the piano, because I could find them on the piano. Then I started to apply that on bass. Then I started to listen to lines and learn them like I did the other stuff. I was just kind of off and running with this borrowed bass and played, trying to not blow up my brother's guitar amp by playing too loud through it.
Yeah.
And, I just became really fascinated by it. Then it was time to give the bass back to the friend, and my mother asked me, do you think you would want a real bass? And I said, I think I'm just messing around. This is just for laughs. I don't think so. They ignored that, and the following Christmas, I got a Fender Precision bass, brand new, the industry standard, not some cheap instrument at the time, which would have had been unplayable probably because they were just not well made at the time.
Neck,
This was like a Fender Precision bass, the cats in the studio play, And I was astounded that it was there. I've said in other places, on my bio on the website, my parents knew I was a bass player before I knew it, and I just went off. That was it. I was dove in the deep end when I graduated from high school. I got my father bought me my first bass amp.
Yeah.
No, it was my birthday before that. Before I graduated, he took me out to a store in Pawtucket, and a Fender Bassman amp, used one, which guys would kill for now to have.
Yeah, probably.
And then my little brother decided he was going to start a band with some friends in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And he was saying, you should come and play with us. And I said, no, I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think so. I'm just doing this. I'm not ready. I'm not just doing this. And my little brother, being the guy that he is, said, come on. Yeah, come on. We're going over Bobby's house and the back room of his father's store. We're going to play in there. So I went in there, and there's, Bobby Jacoby from my own, the guys from my neighborhood, Bobby Jacoby and Ricky Ferry and, people like that. And we just started playing stuff. And what do you know? Well, Sympathy for the Devil. And we played Sympathy for the Devil for like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I had never had the experience of playing live music with somebody, with other people for the first time, just went through me like lightning, And that was it. That was it. I want, my fingers were completely bleeding and had blisters that had broken and skinned off, and I just couldn't wait to heal them up and go back and do it again, do it some more.
Yeah.
It's just like this. I mean, and this is the common thread behind all of this is like, seeing the Beatles, when you were a kid. That's at the bottom of everybody's story. Mm-hmm. And then girls showed up at some of the rehearsals, and that was it. Right. That was it. I'm doing this. I'm doing this a lot. And when can we do it again?
Yeah.
And so I was in that band with my younger brother, and we got in a lot of fights about stuff. And
what was the name of that band?
That band was called. It started out as being called Dirty Socks. Which is taken from a line on the inner sleeve of the Stones album, Let It Bleed.
Okay.
There's a line in the corner at the bottom of the liner notes. It just says Hard Knocks and Dirty Socks.
Okay.
And we took that from there. So that was it for a while. And then it became other things. But and that was me through, played my first gig in 1972, January of 1972. So it was at the 50th anniversary last year of the first gig.
Do you remember where that was? Or?
It was it wasn't even a high school dance. It was a meeting in the church basement of the Catholic Youth Organization group for this parish in the North End where we went to school. Yeah. And we just basically took over the meeting. Okay. We just said, we're going to play after the meeting, Yeah. So we set up our amps and just decided we were going to play, and that was it. And then we wound up playing dances after that. We knew 3 songs, and we played them 3 times each.
Nice.
Just because we took over, and a lot of this was my younger brother, who was like the more assertive. What the hell? Let's do it. That was his thing, And he just kind of dragged me into it, and I'm glad he did. Yeah. It was like my family. I was like not really assertive, but my family just kind of saw something there. Yeah. And said, come on, why not?
Do this, yeah.
And that was it. So we took over that, and we played some dances, and then we played, parties, local people's, local guys from stoners from the high schools would throw parties, and we would play them, and that kind of stuff. Some clubs here and there.
Yeah. Were you doing any original stuff?
No, not at that point. It was all like Rolling Stones, Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers. I wanted to be Barry Oakley. When I heard the Allman Brothers band, that was it. I wanted to be Barry Oakley. Yeah. And I played with a pick, and we played a lot of those songs. And it was, it's music that in the, by the time like 72, 73, 74, the music scene was moving on to other things, and we were still there, and so we didn't really, and it wasn't a wonderful band either, but we played a bunch of stuff, and it was a good sounding, a good rocking band, but it had its limits, and but I learned a lot doing it, and then so when that band broke up, at that point I had met my wife, the woman who would become my wife, and she had whole different musical tastes. Yeah, okay. She liked singer-songwriters like James Taylor and Gordon Lightfoot and stuff like that. Yeah, okay. And Jackson Browne. I'm thinking like, yeah. But I would go over her house and she would play this stuff, and the more I listened to it, I realized there was some great. I mean, Leland Sklar played bass on all those early James Taylor records. Mm-hmm. Rick Haynes played bass in Gordon Lightfoot's band right up until he died last year.
Oh, okay.
And his bass playing on those early albums where there's not a whole lot of instrumentation, it's just 2 guitars and bass, and Gordon Lightfoot singing, so you could really hear these parts coming out, no drums.
Yeah.
So it's a whole different approach. And I just kind of got fascinated by that stuff and a lighter touch on the bass and a more melodic approach.
Yep.
And then at some point right around then, my older brother, who had gone off to Berkeley, would every once in a while drop a jazz album on me, like the first Weather Report album. Here, listen to this. Freddie Hubbard's Red Clay. Here, listen to this.
Yeah.
Or Miles Davis's Bitches Brew. Here, listen to this. I'm like, what? I had no idea what I was listening to, but it was fascinating.
Yeah.
And the bass parts were certainly, there. And I just kind of got fascinated by jazz, too.
Did you continue in that pattern of, like, hearing this music and then, like, sitting with it and trying to learn it? So when you'd get, like, that Miles record, you'd be like, let me just try to play it.
Actually, no. For some of those, I didn't for a long time. It took me, because I realized that there was way more going on, not just in the bass parts, but musically. Yeah. I mean, I didn't even do that like with the band, with their music. Rick Danko and the song structures that they wrote, you could tell that they came from the blues in different places, but they weren't playing a straight blues like I had been used to. And this was not like a long jams like an Allman Brothers tune. It was just like a little story with this group of 5 guys that was, had their own language almost. And I used to listen to Rick Danko's bass parts and just scratch my head. And it was the same thing with like some of those jazz records that I hear. My brother would play a George Benson record. Okay. And things like he's playing bebop at that time, and I had no idea. He gave me an album with Jim Hall and Ron Carter, just guitar and bass, do a live album. And I'm listening to what Ron Carter is doing with this guy with no drums. Yep. And it was like just mysterious. Yeah. And then I would follow the line and find that Ron Carter played with Miles Davis. And I'd listen to some of the things he did there. And like, wow, it's mid-'60s Miles Davis quintet. Yeah. It was just mystifying. Then I actually bought Bitches Brew on my own, come to think of it. That wasn't a gift. And just, I knew it was unlike what I had heard before. And once in a while I would sit and try to, I remember trying to figure out the line to, the intro line to Bitches Brew, the doom 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 doom, and I kind of figured it out. But then in the middle of the song, it would just kind of get out there. So I don't,
I can't do that.
So I was getting informed by that music, but I wasn't playing it yet. Yeah. But later on, I think all that early listening I did.
Yeah, exactly. That's what comes.
When I finally started to try and play it, I had the information in there, even if I didn't know the terminology or the theory, the information of what the bass did in certain contexts in jazz music was already in there. Yeah. So people, again, my family put music in my ears. Yeah. And in my life, almost against, in spite of me. Yeah. I was born into a family that loved music. My mother played. My father was a huge fan. Mm-hmm. When they would go to see the big bands when they were dating, my mother told me she would want to dance because it was even like Duke Ellington. It was music for dancing.
Yeah.
She would be the one that wanted to dance. She said your father would stand by the bandstand and look and try to check out what everybody was doing. He was that guy.
Yeah.
You know.
That's me too. I'm always like standing by the side of the stage and be like, what is the drummer doing?
Yeah. And even though he didn't play himself, he loved the idea that his children, might have an interest in it. Yeah. He was like all in as far as supporting it when it happened.
Yeah.
And what that also meant was we lived on the third floor of a 3-decker in the North End.
And where was this?
North End of Providence.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Right down the hill from Providence College. Right?
Cool.
Where the hockey rink is for Providence College now was my grandfather's goat field, where his goats
really
where they would go up the hill and feed the goats up in that field. So we were down the hill from there.
Yeah.
Now grandparents, and 2 aunts are on the first floor. An aunt and uncle are on the second floor, and we're on the third floor with all the musicians.
Yeah.
Right? So I can't imagine what it was like to, live on the second floor. I apologize to my Aunt Mary late in life for that. I said, I know that can't have been fun. And she just laughed. But they would let us drag our stuff upstairs and rehearse.
Wow.
In a 5-room apartment on a 3rd floor with thin, a sliding door. My father's on the other side of a sliding door trying to watch the game on his one night off.
Yeah.
Working his tail off as a sheet metal worker, and he's trying to work, and we're right next in the room next door, blaring away.
Wow.
And they were fine with it.
Yeah.
They were fine with it. There was just never a question of this has got to stop or you got to, it just.
Yeah.
They were totally behind it, and I thought everybody was like that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought every family had instruments and loved music, and you could do this. And a lot of people, guys in the neighborhood, was like, "Oh no, man, can we come over to your house?"
Mm-hmm.
And an old buddy of mine, when we talk about this stuff, he said, "I wish I'd grown up in your neighborhood." But it was just that's what life was.
Yeah.
You just made music together. My Aunt Isabel couldn't play guitar, but she didn't let that stop her from trying to play guitar. And she would sing and bang out things that weren't even chords, but she would sing at family gatherings.
Yeah.
My mother, self-taught piano player.
Yeah.
But she would play at the drop of a hat or make you a tape. Let me make you a tape so you can take it home for your kids. And she write songs she wrote a specific theme song for my 2 kids and my sister's 2 kids.
Really?
She composed a specific, little song for each. That's what life was for us.
Yeah.
And, just have a new guitar. Okay, great. Can I play it? Yeah. Would you like to play bass? No. Here's a bass anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's late at night and I'm listening to stuff, trying to learn stuff. And my father is 2 rooms away trying to sleep.
Yeah.
And you don't say boo.
Yeah.
And my older brother saying, coming home from Berkeley, I was scared to death of him when he went to Berkeley because that represented ascending the mountain, and I wasn't going to be going studying music. That's not, wasn't what I saw myself doing. And I would make sure that I was never playing, that he was never in the house when I was playing or practicing or trying to learn a song. And one day,
why is that? Just because
I didn't want him to. I didn't want him to hear. Yeah, I was intimidated, even though he wasn't trying to intimidate. I just didn't. I was. And I remember one day it was right toward the end of his last semester, and I'm playing, and he came home unexpectedly while I was learning a new thing, and it was actually a blues tune, but it was in 6/8. And it was swinging. It was kind of swinging. It was a Paul Butterfield thing, and it was like doom 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 doom. And it was a walking bass line, in 3. And all of a sudden the door opens and he's listening, and I was mortified, You
got caught.
Because not only just playing bass, but playing something that almost sounded like jazz, and I was like, oh my god! And he went, no, don't stop. That sounded good.
Yeah.
And I almost peed myself.
Yeah.
That he actually was, would say that,
Mm-hmm. This is Frank, right?
Yeah. So it was, it was just always there. It was always around. We breathed it. You went to bed listening to this stuff. You woke up and listened to stuff. Pop would take us to the record store at the drop of a hat and stand, either wait in the car or stand by the register while we just looked around and picked out what we needed, what we wanted to find.
Yeah.
He was, there was a record stores on North Main Street, a few of them that we used to go to, and he knew one of the guys was an old jazz guy from the area, Carl Henry.
Yeah.
And my father knew him, and that was the place. Carl knew jazz, but that was also the place to go for like the newest single from the Stones or something like that.
Yeah.
Or R&B stuff.
Yeah.
And my father would stand there and talk to him, because my father, right in that same area, was the Celebrity Club, which was the first integrated jazz club in the nation. In Rhode Island, now what's Moshassuck Square. It was Randall Square at the time. So his sheet metal shop that he worked at was in that area. And he knew Carl because of the Celebrity Club, and he knew musicians, he knew, and so he would hang out and talk to Carl while we looked around.
Yeah.
So it was
unbelievable sport.
This was just everyday life for us. Yeah. And I didn't really grasp how different it was from a lot of the upbringing that a lot of my friends had at the time. And as I got older, that was not how most people lived in those days. Yeah. But they made sure we did our homework and all that kind of stuff. And, but it was just it was as much a part of our lives as eating and drinking. Yeah. And
well, it seems like it's paid off.
It was great. It was
what your career.
It did. Eventually, what happened was, like, as I was getting out of college, I was involved in a country rock band. Okay. That was called Bourbon Renewal. Yeah. Yeah, and Tower of Power had an album out at the time called Urban Renewal, so we called it Bourbon Renewal, a.k.a. the band that's drunker than you are. All right. That was our tagline. The band that's drunk, and we were. But we were playing. It started out as almost a bluegrass band, and then it evolved into it added drums and became a country rock band, and the guitar player liked the Allman Brothers too, so we threw some of that in there. And that's what I was doing all the way, mostly through college. Yeah. As that was ending, the band broke up kind of suddenly. Yeah. And I had gotten married at that point, and I was a new father. And now it was like, I need to replace some of this money that, this was some income. We were working a fair amount. Yeah, okay. And I was a first year teacher in a Catholic school making like nothing. Mm-hmm. So I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? Maybe I should actually get a gig. Mm-hmm. And there was an older guy in the area, Hank Walters, who was like one of the guys in the local country music scene, straight ahead country music. Yeah. And he had heard our band at a day-long thing with a bunch of bands playing, and he liked it. He said to me, if you ever need a gig, come see me. And I'm thinking, yeah, right. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Now I needed a gig, so I went to Hank one night where he was playing at a club in East Providence, and on a break, I said, hey, Hank, how you doing? I said, you remember when you mentioned about, like, if I needed a gig, do you know anybody? And without a pause, he goes, show up next Thursday night here. And I went, well, what about the dude that's playing? The guy was in the other room. I said, what about that dude? Like, yeah. And he said, don't worry about that. Show up next Thursday night. Wow. And I showed up next Thursday night, and he said, okay, it's 4 nights a week. What? Wow. And that was it. I started. No rehearsal, no charts. I didn't know most of the tunes. Yeah. Just get up and play. Here you go, right in the deep end. And all I could see, all I had to go on was the back of his left hand to see, and my ears. So I had to listen for when the chords were changing and watch his hand, and then memorize, or when it's here, it's the 4 chord. When he's playing over here, I could only see the back. I couldn't even see the front.
He wasn't even turning it to show you what the chord was.
Nope, he wouldn't. He would just look over his shoulder and laugh.
Wow.
And the drummer would tell me what to. Now, some of them, if they were standards, like I can't help it if I'm still, I knew that one, all right? And I could get my way through that one.
Yeah.
And then after doing them a few times, I kind of learned them. And then they'd throw some new stuff at me.
Yeah.
You know, let's try this one. You know, you haven't heard this one. All right, here it is. 1, 2, 3. It's in D.
Yeah.
And that's it. So my ears, I really developed my ears. There was no, it was sink or swim. 4 sets a night.
Wow.
And we were playing mostly on Fridays and Saturdays for dancers.
Yeah.
So all the dancers would be there and they would do, you know, so you would have to play all the, you know, the waltzes and all the Hank tunes and all the Hank Thompson tunes and all the, you know, George Jones tunes and the Tammy Wynette stuff and, you know, and Kenny Rogers, Kenny Rogers hits. We were doing all of those, you know.
Yeah.
And you just had to play them for the dancers. On Thursdays and Sundays, there weren't as many dancers. So it was a great pedal steel player in the band. And he and the guitar player, Hank, knew a bunch of Western swing stuff. Mm-hmm. So they would pull that stuff out and we'd play in Western swing. Now I'm having to play doom, 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 almost like walking lines and following them at the same time, you know?
Yeah.
And the drummer's playing, you know, it wasn't jazz, but it was like, boy, this is not, you know,
it's not. Today
I pass you on the street. This is, you know, so you know, and I had to improvise, you know, and learn to play. And he gave me he would give me solos after a while.
Yeah,
it was unheard of.
Yeah,
you know. But again, I'm one of the real supportive guys, and I learned how to be a musician for hire on that gig. Yeah. And my ears I really developed my ears and my sense of listening for musical forms and patterns and that kind of stuff. And the more I did that, the more I learned the instrument. I got around. I was able to get around more on the instrument because I was having to do more than play whip and post.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
And show up every night sober and do the gig.
Yeah.
You know?
And what was the venue that this was at?
There was a few of them that he played at. There was the main one was on Lyon Avenue in East Providence. It was called the Lion's Den.
Okay.
And it was Lyon.
Yeah.
And it was you would go in and you go downstairs. It was a basement club. So you'd walk in, and as you'd be walking down the stairs, the smoke, you'd be walking into a level of smoke that was like here, and then like this.
Like
you're
a
just
cloud that you're
submerging yourself in smoke because everybody smoked in those days in the clubs. So it was that kind of stuff, and it was a hangout for East Providence police. So there was a lot of that there.
Yeah.
And they loved the band. The dancers loved the band.
Yeah.
You know, and they were really nice to me. I was coming in from a different background, but they were really nice. Yeah. You know, to me when I got another gig and 2 years later and left the band, everybody was like, "What? Oh, come on!"
Yeah.
And one cop, Hank, was there, and one cop got me up against the bar and said, "Hey, you want me to make him stay?"
Whoa! All right. Yeah.
But they were great, and he was like really gracious and really supportive, and it was a great first professional experience. Mm-hmm. And then I played in a bunch of. There was a good friend of mine from school, Steve Dubois, he's gone, but he was a great songwriter.
Yeah. And
this was in like the late 70s, early 80s, and Steve had a band. He was very much into like new wave stuff,
Yeah.
So he was writing stuff in that vein, and he had a band called The Words.
Okay.
And I did a bunch of gigs with them for a while.
Yeah.
And then started freelancing a little bit. My older brother, again, was getting ready to leave for the West Coast. Mm-hmm. And he had been doing some sub work on bass, playing some weddings.
Okay.
For this guy that he knew at a place in Tiverton who had it was a restaurant, wedding factory kind of thing. They had 3 rooms, and this singer had the contract for the house. So he was the house band. Frank had been doing some gigs, gotten through the jazz guys because they all played weddings.
Yep.
He was playing bass. He said, "Look, I'm getting ready to leave to California. You should start doing some of these gigs." Mm-hmm. So he sent me on a couple of those gigs.
Yeah.
And again, they were charts, but like I hadn't been reading charts.
Yeah.
And they weren't like long big band charts, but just chord charts for, the Neil Diamond song or a Lionel Richie ballad or something like that.
Yeah.
And and during the dinner set, they played standards from the real book. And it's I hadn't do that before, and I'm struggling my way through. I'm through the first 3 bars, but they're now down at the bottom of the page because I, stayed behind. And it's and the piano player was a great jazz piano player who I wound up doing a bunch of gigs with years later. But he would show me. We're going here, it's going here, this, and this. All right. And we're going to a new key here, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he helped me get through that.
Yeah.
So again, I had to play in a context where I wasn't playing loud. I had to play dinner music and then dancers, but a whole other kind of dancers. Now it's people who want to dance to, John Mellencamp early hits, John Cougar Mellencamp hits, and early Billy Joel hits, and Neil Diamond.
Yeah, radio stuff.
That kind of stuff was on the radio, so I had to learn to basically make myself do that and do it, the right way and play, with people.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot. Did a bunch of Joe Perillo played piano later on in a bunch of. We did a ton of gigs together.
Oh, cool.
Doing in that circuit, and I've told people this before. I was warned that this singer, my brother warned me that this singer will try to bust your chops.
Really?
So just be ready for it. Okay. He's a good guy, but he will, So I get there and I do the gig, and he didn't say much to me through the gig. At the end of the gig, he comes over and pays me, and he gives me my money. He shook my hand. He goes, Joe, I worked with a lot of bass players in my time. And then he walked away. He just turned, he looked at me and nodded and then turned and walked away. What? Yeah. But that's what he would do,
Yeah.
No, I think one of the first wedding gigs I ever did with that guy, Greg Abate was playing saxophone.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I knew who he was because I would go see him at Allery, the club downtown where all the jazzers played. And but then he's on this gig, and he's calling like Roland Kirk tunes in the first set. And I had a real book, but I'm like, I can't get, And he would leave me in the dust, and I'm like sweating like crazy, just trying to make, get through this song. And little by little, again, being thrown in the deep end, I learned how to get through a chord chart in the real book.
Yeah.
And then when I realized, people do sessions where they play these songs, and I would start, some of these guys would invite me to sessions, and I started doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And again, you'd fall on your face, but in the sessions, it was not a big deal.
Yeah. But what kind of drove you to still do that? Was it like, because it's interesting to hear that. Like I could see myself just bailing on that and be like, I don't know. But I think you just kept on going with it.
I think what did it for me, what kept me going, and there was a lot of self-flagellation about this. Oh man, I can't believe it. I can't play fast tempos. Oh man, I'll never sound as good as this guy. It was a lot of that.
Yeah.
But what kept me going was the same thing that kind of was like from the first experience of playing live music. And especially with players who were better than me, who weren't making fun of me, but were being supportive.
Yeah, okay.
It was like, boy, when we got through Blues for Alice, a Charlie Parker tune at a medium tempo, big deal. Any junior high school kid can do that now. But the experience of doing that with other musicians, and it's like, boy, this is sort of like I heard on this record, and then I would started listening more. It was a self-feeding mechanism. I'd start to listen to more music and try to like do what I heard upright players doing.
Okay.
But I also tried to see how can I adapt this to bass guitar, and trying to do that. And then when it would work, or you'd be in a session, or I'd get a gig and then get called again, or we'd do another session and we'd actually make progress. Then it was like, self-feeding, self-perpetuating.
Okay.
And it was that same thrill of like, I can't believe I'm getting to do this with these guys, and no one's telling me to shut up.
Yeah.
No one's telling me you suck. even though at the time I probably sucked. You know?
Yeah. Or just started thinking that more, yeah.
And I'd just be going to more sessions and doing these gigs, and it fed that side of it. And I didn't give up on any of the other music I played. I still loved it, but this opened up a whole other door. And improvising.
Yeah, okay.
And then the more I listened, especially in the 80s, I really threw myself into listening to jazz, not just older jazz, but like what was going on at the time, you know.
Like got deeper listening.
Got into like Ornette Coleman and that kind of stuff, and Charlie Hayden's playing, and John Scofield's playing with Steve Swallow.
Okay.
Steve Swallow was a huge influence at the time because he was playing bass guitar and playing jazz.
Yeah, okay.
And another person that did that was Anthony Jackson. Mm-hmm. And I would go see those guys. I would see those guys live, and I saw Gary Burton's band with Pat Metheny and Steve Swallow when Metheny was like 18 years old or something like that, you know.
Okay.
And you could see them in places at the colleges, or there was a club in Newport, or a couple of places where you could go see these guys. Mm-hmm. And we would go all the time to see all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I'd listen and go see how they did it live. I'd listen to a lot of upright players, even though I knew I wasn't going to be an upright player. And how do they do what they do? What does the bass do in that music as this guy is doing it? Mm-hmm. And then let me see if there's a way I can get to that on bass guitar.
Okay.
And that became my thing. I am going to adapt. When I play jazz, I'm going to still be a bass guitarist, but I'm going to try to take what upright players do and not sound just like an upright. You can't sound just like an upright.
Yeah.
But perform that same function of the propelling the music forward, and the shape of the notes. They have that boom, 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 like they have a big bloom out front, and then boom, and they're like round, almost like big football shaped notes.
Yeah.
If you could visualize what a boom, 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 boom sounds like, and I said, how do you do that? What have I got to do with my hands to sound like that?
Yeah. As
opposed to what I do when I want to sound like Barry Oakley or Paul McCartney, you know, like, what do you do? Well, let's keep trying.
Yeah.
And
that's interesting.
I didn't get, like, I don't sound like an upright player, you know. I don't want to sound like an upright player. I want to sound like somebody who's found a way to put their personality in that kind of music.
Yeah.
And then on the next gig, play a Willie Nelson song and play it like it should be played, you know, or on the next tune, go to a blues gig and do it, you know, and not play too much, but just boom, 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 you know, just lay down the thing, or play a 1-chord funk tune and, you know, don't get too busy and stay on, you know, hit the one like Bootsy, you know, that kind of, I wanted to be able to do all of that because I loved hearing all of that.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I try to like hear what's going on in the music, especially, and what role the bass is playing here, and what can I learn from that. And then now it's filter it through me, because that's there. Yeah. That's established. I play the way I play.
Yeah.
But it's always like looking to see how can I either sound close to that or do something that has my personality in it as well, in the same way that people I admire did it. Like Charlie Hayden could play in any context. Mm-hmm. And he'd always fit, but it always sounded like him.
Yeah.
You know, Anthony Jackson could play in any context. Mm-hmm. But it always sounded like him. And it was always musical.
Yeah.
And then the thing is, the more I started working with people like, you know, who were like songwriters, I started later on, you know, I'd play with different songwriters and that kind of stuff. Like and it's like, and it got me back to the whole thing, like Gordon, what happens in a Gordon Lightfoot song? How does Rick Haynes play behind a guy's song as opposed to a jazz tune?
Yes.
Well, you do this. You do this with your hands instead of this. You go for this kind of sound instead of this kind of sound. You go for, the notes are shaped a little bit differently here. There's more space over here.
Yeah.
And I try to do that and bring that, you know, to those contexts. From the mid 80s all the way through, you know, from the early 80s all the way through the 90s, I was also working a ton of weddings.
Okay.
Because that's where the money was.
Yes, yeah.
And I had 2 kids, and it was, you know, and I was a teacher in a Catholic school, so
Yeah.
needed to do that.
Yeah.
So I played a ton of weddings with great musicians. And it was 80s, so I played 80s dance music. You know, I sang Susudio.
Yeah.
I was in a band, one wedding band I was in for a number of years, specialized in the guy before me, the bass player before me was a great singer and a great harmony singer. So they used to do a lot of Manhattan Transfer stuff.
Oh, okay.
So in order to get the gig, I had to learn those vocal parts as well as playing what they played, in addition to all, Wham. I had to learn Wham tunes because that was the gig. And you just learn to do it. I later on, a few years later, I brought a whole rig and played synth bass for the 80s dance tunes that we did.
Wow.
With a little keyboard and triggering a bunch of modules and these big fat bass sounds, because that's what you needed.
Yeah.
That's what you needed to do.
Yeah.
And I wore the tuxedos, and I had never home on weekends.
Yeah.
Like Friday, 2 on Saturday, maybe 2 on Sunday. There were years where at least 3 years where I was, for the whole month of December, I was not home one night because of Christmas parties. Every single night. So we worked a ton. Yeah. But after
trade-off, though.
15 years of doing that, by mid-90s, I had kind of had it.
Yeah.
And I just had to stop.
Yeah.
Because it had gotten to the point where I didn't want to play. I didn't want to touch the instrument anymore.
Wow. Yeah. As
I said to one leader when I quit, I said, I definitely appreciate the work.
Yeah.
I said, but this feels like a factory job with a tuxedo on.
Yeah.
It was, it had gotten to the point where I didn't even feel like I was playing music.
Yeah.
And I needed to get back to that. And then I started freelancing and playing with different people. Still kept the tux because, you
never know. Yeah.
They call.
Exactly. Yeah.
But just started branching out and playing like a little bit more R&B and things, and with songwriters.
Yeah. How did you get connected with the different people? Was it just your out there, or
there was the R&B connection came through a good friend, Tony Medeiros, who had a band called the Chili Brothers.
Yeah, okay.
And I got to be in that band after the guy that was in it had left. Tony was kind of reforming it. I played a lot with him, and he was connected to Rick Dango and the guys in the band because of his friendship with those guys. So I heard a lot about that stuff, and we actually got to play behind Rick Dango one time.
Wow.
Tony brought him into town not long before his death, but we did get to play with one of my bass heroes at the time. And so him, and we did a bunch of gigs with Tony and that band, and then backing up different singers. And then I forget how the connection came, but it was through Marianne Rossoni, who was an illustrator, painter, and great songwriter. Yeah. And she was doing some gigs with she wanted to put together a band to play some of her stuff, and I wound up getting into that with some other people we knew. And it got me back to that thing of play the song. Yeah. Don't play so much. You don't have to play. And usually the rehearsals where we have less bass. It's too busy. All right. Okay. Yeah, I get it. And then I finally got it. All right. In my mind, it's like, what does the Gordon Lightfoot record sound like? And then I started playing them like that, and it was like, that's what works. And I rediscovered what a blast it was to play songs, to play good songs that told a story, and just play your part and support them.
The 7 stars are baking red. Autumn leaves dance round my head. Daffodils chill in their beds so early on this morning. The sun peeks through her hazy veil, tries to warn to no avail, but she will rise without fail so early on this morning. Cover me with red and gold, wind whisper tales long told, and I will paint you a portrait of spring.
Yeah. All the while, on the other side of the coin, I'm still playing with more jazz guys, and and getting involved in in different situations. There was an original band I played with guitar player writer Steve DeConti, who's living in South County now. Great writer, and it was guitar, bass, drums, and vibes, and did a whole bunch of original music that came out of Pat Metheny and Gary Burton, and learned a lot there about like how to read better and how to interpret people's writings that weren't traditional. And there was some free playing, there was some free improvisation in that band too. So I got to get into that. So that was going on while this other stuff was going on. So there were the three tracks, like the songwriter, rootsy kind of stuff. Yeah. The weddings, and then the sessions with jazz guys. Yeah. And then I just started liking freelancing. So I just made myself, put myself out there, and just gradually somebody would try me. Oh, okay, well, yeah, or they referred me to somebody else. Hey, I heard you play with so and so. Can you do this gig? Yeah. And at first, I was a little reluctant to take some of the gigs that I wasn't familiar with. After a while, I just said, "The hell!" It's not that I took every gig. I'm not a great sight reader, so when guys would call me up, the big band needs something. No, I can't do that. Yeah, okay. I know that's not my strength. Yeah, and I wouldn't do that. But I'd play in a small group with some of those guys.
Yeah. No, yeah, I remember. I don't even know who you were playing with, but it just comes to mind. I just ran into you're playing at Aspire.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's a whole other chapter. But
yeah. But it just just seeing you, it just seems that it's like, oh, it's just Joe's just just playing with everyone.
That gig fell into my lap in, I think, probably 2008, something like that. Yeah. My daughter had a job working in the office at Hotel Providence.
Oh, okay.
And
kind of right next door, right?
She asked me, she said one day, she called me up and said, "Can you come in and have a breakfast meeting with the general manager? He's thinking about having jazz here."
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I went, all right. I did nothing, didn't know what to expect. So I went in, and the guy already had the table cards printed up. Friday jazz. What? Yeah. And we talked for a good long time, and because it was a hotel bar.
Yeah. Okay.
My first question was, do you want background music, or do you want real jazz? Yeah. I said, because it really makes a difference what we'll do. I said, I could do both of them. He said, oh, no. We don't want background. We really want to feature the music, because they had an outside courtyard. And so I said, okay. I think one thing we won't do is I'm not going to bring in people who will blow the roof off the place and alienate your customers. I said, but if you don't want background music, then what you're going to get is music. I can contact some good players, and we will play without blowing your customers away. But if you're going to feature it, I want the room to know that they're there to listen. He said, that's how we want to promote it. Yeah. I said, okay. Yeah. And then he asked me, who's the band? And I said, I don't have a band. And for a minute, I contemplated forming a regular house trio with a different guest every week. And I thought, no, you know what? I said, not going to do that. I said, I'm going to put together an entirely different band every single week with a different featured artist.
Wow, yeah.
And I knew there were people I could call. Yeah. So when he said, okay, start in a few weeks. Yeah. So I went home and I just started calling people.
You said you're doing this thing.
And I would start with who would the featured person be? And then I would ask who do you like to play with? Mm-hmm. If it's a singer, who's your favorite piano player? If it's a horn player, who do you like on drums? That kind of stuff. I'll get them, Yeah. And after a few weeks of doing that, when people saw it was becoming a regular thing, now all of a sudden I'm everybody's best buddy. It's like, hey man, you need somebody for cool. And I was able to get people in there that I almost had no business playing with.
Really? Okay.
To get Greg Abate in there to play on a Friday night in a hotel bar. I even asked, he came to hear somebody else one night. Yeah. And I said, he knew my brother and I knew him from around the area. And off the cuff said, Greg, you wouldn't want to do this gig sometime, would you? Thinking that he'd go, oh, I'd probably, I got things wrong. He'd go, yeah, I'd love to do it. And I went, oh, shit. So now, again, very happy that it's going to happen, but also scared to death that now I have to play with Greg.
Don't mess up there,
And okay, who do you like on drums? And he got a great drummer and a great piano player. So we called him up. Good, let's go. And then he'll come in with like a few charts of new tunes and the tempos are up there. And, but again, back in the deep end.
Yeah.
And, it would be people like that, singers I had never worked with that somebody else would recommend. So-and-so says, oh, yeah, I'd love to do it. Yeah, I've got my own book. I'll bring my, so now they have a book, and it's time to play, and they're calling tunes, and I got to read their book down.
Wow, yeah.
Or it'll be people that I know, but I'll do like different, combinations of people like that. That's how I met Gino Rosati.
Really?
Piano player got sick not long before the gig, the day before the gig, and I needed somebody. Couldn't find a piano player. But I had met Gino after he had gotten out of the Navy.
Yeah.
At a session in Newport, so I called him up, and he played the gig. I think it was behind Tish Adams.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first set, my wife comes over and goes, "Keep this guy's number."
Yeah. Okay.
Because and we knew it was like, yep. Yeah, you could tell he was something special,
Mm-hmm.
And we wound up doing a whole bunch of gigs together as a result of that. So I formed a lot of bonds with people through that 7 years on that gig of every week.
Yeah.
And still work with with some of them here and there. Got worked with a few people who they're on that gig for once, but it was great to play with Bob Gulati, the great drummer Bob Gulati, who just died a couple of years ago from Boston. Played with the Fringe for years.
Wow, yeah.
Played, incredible musician, great teacher.
Yeah.
And Deborah Mann, again, rest her soul, she's gone too. Great singer, really great book. She had Bob Gulati on the gig, so I got to play with Bob Gulati.
Yeah.
Again, I had no business playing with Bob Gulati, but he was just a blast to play with. Michael Renzi, who we lost a couple of years ago, great piano player, came down to play with his old buddy Ted Kasher. Mm-hmm. Great saxophonist. Ted was like, "Oh, let's get Mike Renzi." Okay. And now I'm playing with Mike Renzi, who's forgotten more music than I could ever learn.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's a great accompanist, and he knows all the right chords, and and I'm just learning. It's like going to grad school playing with him.
Yeah.
But then these guys would, sounds good. Ted Kasher, who had a big booming voice like that. I was like, yeah, Joe. I like that forward-moving directionality you got there. It's like, and to have somebody like that say that they dig what I'm doing, is like, that, again, more encouragement.
Yeah.
And it should be mentioned that some guys of that generation took a very different approach to young players.
Really?
They would haze them. They would bust their balls.
Yeah.
They would give them a hard time. They would try to play tempos to mess them up, or call a standard in a different key just to mess you up.
Yeah.
And then laugh. And I've never understood how that's doing anyone any good. These guys were all encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One
guy who was very encouraging was Ed Tomasi, legendary teacher at Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on the gig a few times. And even before that, in the early 80s, I would do sessions with him, and he would be very encouraging.
Yeah.
And Ed could be a real hard ass sometimes on his students, real demanding. But he was like as supportive as you could possibly be. I'd mess up. I'd turn around the time in a session and go, "Oh, that's good. That's cool. Let's try it again. Yeah, you're good. You're good."
Yeah.
And that's sounding good now.
Instead of shaming you or whatever.
Just really, making you feel comfortable and pulling you up by the scruff of your neck at the same time.
Yeah.
By not cutting you any slack. So I was very fortunate to fall in with those guys at a number of different points.
Yeah.
It makes all the difference because I've heard and actually seen people go the other way with young musicians, and it's like, what's the point?
Yeah.
This isn't it. You're not a drill sergeant. You know,
Yeah.
like, do you win somehow? Are you the winner now because you shame this young guy
Yeah.
because he couldn't quite, yeah. But by the same token, though, I learned basically what I learned the old school way on the bandstand.
Yeah.
You know, here we go. Here's the hit 1, 2, 3, ready, go. You know.
Yeah.
And that's that. I like that now.
Yeah. There's a lot to
I like it.
You know?
It still scares me, but I like it.
But, yeah.
But that's what's kept it interesting for me. Is just like let's see what this is going to be, and that's what Evening Sky was about too. It's like, we had no idea what that band was going to sound like.
Yeah.
When we knew all the players were interesting.
Yeah.
But we got together, we were just kind of looking at each other like prom date, like dates at the school dance. Like, well, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And the kind of everybody on their own wall,
Yeah.
until someone finally wanted to dance, and we tried different songs, and some of them worked. Let's try this one. Nah, that doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
But then when we found the sound of that band, we all knew we were in different territory too. We all knew we had to take a different approach to our instrument, slightly different approach than what we were used to doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody sensed that. Everybody said that.
Yeah.
And once we got that all out in the open and realized it was going to sound like this, that it wasn't going to sound like a bebop band,
Yeah.
Or just like Pat Metheny or anything like that, it was like, okay, then we kind of had more of the time, and then the pandemic gave us lots of time to find our sound.
Yeah.
But I like that, I used to be afraid when Gina would bring in a new tune. Now I like it.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, it seems like it must be, it could be a surprise at any time, that just because maybe it's overused, but like just Evening Sky has a pretty unique sound just by pulling in all of these different styles. And you're like, we'd love to talk about the new stuff, but you're, did a reworking of a Robert Plant song. You've done, what you did like On the Road Again. So
and
it's
actually
like
both of
you're
those,
just like pulling all of these other songs, and obviously you're writing original things that Gino is pulling in, or that you're writing, or whatever.
Both of those covers that you mentioned too, funny that you should mention it, were the concept for both of those, and the arrangement came from the drummer.
Yeah, it was
Eric.
Yeah,
Eric is like really good at. Oh, let's try it like this.
Yeah.
What if we did it like this? What if we use this groove instead?
Yeah.
And he did that early on with On the Road Again, and then with the Robert Plant tune that's on the Eden Casteel album.
Yeah.
He completely pulled that tune apart and reconstructed it.
Yeah.
And recorded the drum part by himself.
Okay.
To a click, with the arrangement in his head, the way he had written out. Then he wrote out the chart for us. Then he sent us the drum track and took the samples from the original tune and cut and pasted them onto the drum part where he wanted the section of the tune. The tune starts with the bridge in Eric's arrangement. So he cut and pasted from the original and made a blueprint for us, and then said, here's the chart. I already got my drum part recorded. You guys got to come in and put your parts on.
Yeah.
And then he sent it to Eden, and I think she was on the road somewhere and driving. Now I got to learn this tune this way.
Yes.
And everybody just was of the same mind. Yeah, let's try it. When we first heard the tune, the title is like, no, we're gonna do that tune because that's so 90s in my head,
Okay.
But then when I heard the concept, I thought, yep, I get I can absolutely see what his concept was.
Yeah.
And he's done that a number of times.
Yeah.
That's why he was exactly the right guy for this band.
Yeah.
I can't almost think of anybody else around here that would be as ideal for making that band sound the way it sounds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he does it even live in the moment.
Yeah.
When we're improvising. His back.
No one has a bigger snare drum either.
Oh yeah, he actually got yet another deep snare. He's got two deep snares.
I have
now.
like an old like marching snare that I use at times, but it's like half the size of what he plays on a regular basis.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah. He got another one that's slightly less deep, but it still has that similar kind of sound.
Yeah,
we dubbed that sound because we were listening to it on one of the playbacks, and it has that pop, that snare snap to it, but it's also got like some depth to it.
Yes, yeah.
That like almost like Levon Helm's thing, but even a little bit, downward. And I dubbed it. It's the deep slap.
Yeah.
It's just kind of got this, pat, but underneath it, there's a big pad underneath it,
Yeah.
And it's a big part of the sound of the band.
Yeah.
And the way he plays grooves. And the way he varies things, the way he improvises, he has a lot to do with the direction that band takes over the course of a tune.
Yeah, yeah.
And I just listen to him.
Yeah,
I just listen to what he's doing.
That's cool.
As we're developing a thing, and it's like, oh, well, let's try that. All right, let's try this, and then I might have an idea. What if we did this a little bit differently instead? Meanwhile, Gino and Chris are trying to learn their parts, and we're kind of structuring the bottom part of the song.
Yeah.
But it works like that a lot. He has a huge influence over the way this band sounds.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I can't think of another guy that would be would be better for it.
Yeah, nice.
The secret sauce, Chris Brooks.
Yep.
Chris Brooks kind of constantly surprises all of us.
Yeah.
Not just because of his musical background, which is really extensive, but because, and I think all this other stuff has an effect on his musical background. He's lived an incredible life.
Okay.
He's well-traveled. He speaks, I don't know how many languages.
Oh, really?
He's very knowledgeable. He taught English for years. He's, when he was young, he was on the West Coast and traveling with, I forget what the guy had like a hit record out, and Chris was traveling. He's done tours, goodwill tours for the State Department in the Middle East.
Wow.
Okay. He's a really good guitar player in addition to playing pedal steel, plays some saxophone. He knows trombone.
Yeah.
He knows, the guy is a real Renaissance man.
Yeah.
And he's very quiet, but I think all of that has an effect on what he brings to the band.
Yeah.
He's not a bebopper. None of us is.
Yeah.
But he's constantly surprising us with what he plays.
It's interesting.
And you can definitely tell that this guy you can put this guy on a country gig or a Western swing gig, which he does every month at the Parlor, and he's going to play the stuff.
Yeah,
he's going to play the right stuff,
Exactly, yeah.
But you put a Thelonious Monk tune in front of him, and he might wrinkle his head for a long time, and I'm going to need some time with this. But he will come up with something there.
Yeah.
You put like an original tune in front of him that has some, he will figure out something to do that is totally Chris and definitely sounds like a pedal steel guitar, but not at all where you would expect it.
Yeah.
So he's like the secret sauce, and he really is the secret ingredient.
Yeah.
Almost to the point where like I find myself more and more as the band developed. I keep thinking I got to play less. I got to play less and less. We need fewer bass solos. I need to because the sound of the band is the grooves that Eric comes up with, and Gino laughs when I say that. The two guitars dancing with each other.
Yep.
That's the sound of the band.
Yeah.
And being a good bass player in that situation means you lay it in. You work with the drummer. You leave a lot of space.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to take a lot of solos because we don't need them.
Yeah.
And we're playing songs. We're not playing jams.
Yep.
So they don't have to be long.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's smart. Yeah.
That would be the one thing, that the sound of the band, the role that Chris plays in that, and I think it comes from him being such a Renaissance man.
Mm-hmm.
That's
cool.
Because like his other people who know Chris, that guy, oh man, wow, what an incredible musician,
Mm-hmm.
And not just, oh, he's a cool steel player, and he is. He knows all that stuff, and he will tell you all about it.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot more behind what he does.
Yeah. That
people don't see.
Yeah.
And he's really an amazing human being. He's got a incredible background.
Nice. Yeah, it seems like it's also just a fun band to.
Oh, it's a blast. Gino's hilarious.
Just the music that you get to make, but just
you
guys have a great relationship, and
everybody's on the same page with everything. We had to talk through some things, And the more we worked on things, it became clear, like some of the things that I thought, oh, we should do that. Like, no, we don't need to do that, So Gino's really enthusiastic about this band, and he's not he doesn't get enthusiastic about a lot of things, but he's kind of, but like he said this is one of the best bands he's ever been in.
Wow, cool.
Yeah,
good bands.
And he's not free with compliments either. So that's
that means more. Yeah,
it does. It does.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to talk about the new record with Eden. This is the newest installment in your +1 series.
Yeah.
So for those that aren't familiar, Evening Sky, Joe kind of just touched upon it of like the COVID time was, they made the best silver lining did a lot of recording that time. So there's, even in the short time that you've been a band, you have a lot of releases, singles, albums.
Yeah, nothing.
But you've done several of these other +1 series, one with Ben Shaw and some other stuff. But yeah, how did this one come together with
well, we had done the one with Ben. Ben wrote some stuff for us. Gino wrote some stuff for it. Then we had done one with a friend of ours, Leland Brown, who was a former Rhode Islander and now is a part-time Floridian, part-time Rhode Islander. And it was some jazz stuff and some country stuff. We did a tune by the band with him. Yep. Then Tish Adams has been a friend of the band for all of us. Gino and I have done a ton of gigs with Tish. Yep. So last winter, I think maybe before that, time is being compressed, but we started to develop some tunes with her. Yeah. And again, because of Eric Hastings, he stated out front that Tish is known as being a straight-ahead jazz singer. Mm-hmm. And he said, we're not going to do any straight-ahead jazz grooves on this record, no matter what tunes we do. Yeah. And we did some of Tish's regular material, but we rearranged it. And then she thought up the idea of doing the Police tune, Murder by Numbers, and I brought in a Joe Henry tune, and she did a Bill Withers tune. So it became something different. And the thing is, as we're doing that, we're realizing that over the course of an album, we can play this kind of like Latin rock groove behind the Joe Henry song, or this groove that Eric adapted from Stuart Copeland for the Police tune, or a jazz ballad or something like that, and still sound like the same band. So then we started to think of other people that we could record with. Yeah, we had done a couple of singles with Michelle Hill that sounded great, some R&B covers. Yeah, and in the meantime, I had we had Gino and I and actually Eric had met, I think through maybe playing at the Pump House because it's in Wakefield. Had met Eden Casteel, who is a great singer, voice coach, trained coloratura soprano. Cabaret singer, and a really talented piano player. And I think she hired us to play some workshops behind her voice students, so that they could get experience playing in a band, because they maybe hadn't sung with a band before, so she would involve us in those. And then a couple of her students had developed some solo cabaret shows, and she hired us to be part of the band for that. So we started to work with her a little bit more and saw what she could do. And then the idea came up, why don't we do an album with Eden? And we proposed it to her. She said, yeah, I'd love to. So then we started talking about what tunes, we want to do. We had some suggestions and stuff. And because of her range, her musical range, I think she had sat in with us once and done Blue Bayou, the Linda Ronstadt cover of Roy Orbison's tune.
Okay,
and she sounded great, like, doing the Linda Ronstadt, big belt at the end.
Yeah.
And, not at all like a classical soprano, but just like a great, pop singer with pipes.
Yeah.
And, so, all right, well, that's got to be on the album. And then we started kicking around other ideas. It was before Gordon Lightfoot died that the idea to do If You Could Read My Mind came up.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that, in my mind, that takes me back to the time when I was dating my wife and listening to Gordon Lightfoot for the first time and realizing what great music that was.
That's cool.
So that went on there. I proposed, there's a great ballad by Michel Legrand called You Must Believe in Spring. That was one of the great versions of it is Tony Bennett with Bill Evans, just a duo. And it's just a gorgeous, heart-rending song. And it's a jazz song, but it's not like a straight-ahead jazz song. It's a ballad. So we worked that up.
Yeah. And
a lot of that is just voice and guitar with the band coming in on occasion. But that went on there. I had heard, I forget who it might have been me, it might have been somebody else suggested the Jimmy Webb song, The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. Jimmy Webb wrote Wichita Lineman and Galveston and also MacArthur Park. He wrote that one.
Yeah.
So he was like quintessential 60s, sophisticated pop songs. There's one of his that Glenn Campbell recorded called The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. That's really, really beautiful song. So we worked up an arrangement of that, and she sounds great singing that. We're doing for Something Up. We did the tune by Dan Hicks and his Hot Licks called "Walkin' One and Only."
Okay.
He clicks his heels a bit. His suit's a perfect fit.
Yeah, that's cool.
And she sings that. What else is on there? A good friend of Eric's is one of the pit musicians in the Broadway musical Hadestown.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, he plays trombone, and he's actually come to Rhode Island a couple of times to hang out. We play with him. Brian Dry is a great musician, and his part on stage is very integral to the play. So I was fascinated. Somebody else that I knew had played me some of the stuff from Hadestown.
Yeah.
And I'm not a big Broadway musical guy, but we actually went to see the show when it played here in March and loved it. And there's a song that starts the second act where Persephone is held captive in the underworld by Hades.
Okay, yeah.
And on the slide, she's operating a speakeasy. And what she does in the speakeasy, besides she also gives the inhabitants of the underground a chance to see a little bits of the outside world that they missed. So it's her talking about, it's called Our Lady of the Underground, and some of it's spoken word and acting, and then some of it's singing. So I knew it would be perfect for Eden, for somebody with her background.
Yep.
And it's her being very sly about like, I got the moon right here in the jar. I got the rain on tap at the bar. I got the sunshine up on the shelf. Allow me to introduce myself. And then it's Persephone, giving everybody a hint of what they miss about the world. But the groove is just this nasty, slow funk tune.
Yeah.
And it's like a slinky bass line that's played by an upright bass. So we adapted it, and put the steel, had the steel playing some of the trombone parts and stuff like that. And Gino playing like a kind of like gypsy style old jazz rhythm guitar, like quarter notes on that. And Eden just does her thing, and she, the actress part of her, plays that part.
That's cool.
And it's a vampy kind of a tune, but man, it's got a nasty groove.
Yeah.
So we did that. And there's another. There's a Roseanne Cash tune that she covered, the Sea of Heartbreak.
Yeah.
But again, Eric rearranged it so it doesn't sound quite like
what the
original does.
Yeah.
There's a few others. I'm trying to. I can't think of all the tunes right now, but
what's it like working with all of these different people, and more specifically with like what is the process for that? Like, are you we'll getting them in like during regular practice sessions and working on these songs, or are you guys creating and then
usually it will
be added in, or
if it comes up as an idea like who would be good to record to, we'll float the idea by that person, and if they're into it, it's like, okay, great, let's meet and talk about what we might do and bring ideas. Yeah. So we'll have a meeting with that person, maybe play a little bit, but talk a lot, and like usually, it's always someone who already knows what the band is about. Yeah, like
probably perform or whatever.
So I think in one case we of something that's recorded in the can with John McKenna. John is a great tenor player, and he's played with Gino and me. But we sent him, here's what the band sounds like. Yeah. Think about it. And he was like, yeah, I'm down. But his thing came out sounding very differently. So it all starts with that first, conversation about what kind of things will we like to do. Ideas will get tossed around. All right, let's try this. Can we try a little bit of this song? And just to see how it is working with the guest.
Does it click? Does it not?
Feel each other out. And then more ideas will come up about, we could do this one. Or somebody will say, hey, maybe it would be cool if we tried this one. What about this? And some of them, no, that's not going to work. So others, I'm not crazy about that tune. Others like, wow, I've never heard that, but that's a great idea. Let's try that, So that goes back and forth, and then we'll try them at rehearsal. We'll get together again. And when it seems like we've got some material that we know work, then we'll start working on what the arrangement's going to be like. Yeah. And what's the right key? If it's a singer, if it's like an original that somebody else brought in, like Ben brought in some original, how are we going to play this tune? Yeah. And sometimes we'll even make changes to the tune to make everything fit better. Yeah. And then once it looks like we got an arrangement, then we'll, play it a few times, maybe do another couple of rehearsals, and at some point say, all right, when will we be ready to record this stuff? Mm-hmm. Set a target date and work toward that. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we'll do it all live, but when you have a horn or a singer in the small space, we got to be careful of bleeding. Yeah. So sometimes we have to do it with like a small scratch vocal, record the basic track, get that right, and then have the singer come in when there's no bleed, or the horn player, and put other parts on there. But it depends. It depends on, who the guest is and what the recording, the configuration has to be. And we figure that out as we go. Yeah, okay. And sometimes the arrangements evolve, and change in the rehearsal process. But it's always a give and take, and it's like, we try not to impose things on the guests, but we make suggestions. Mm-hmm. Hey, have you ever heard this? Like Tish had never heard of Joe Henry. Okay. He was a great, tremendous. I love his songwriting. He's a great producer. And I said, hey Tish, this might sound like you. All right. And I said, don't get put off by the instrumentation or whatever. And she listened to it because it's Mark Rebo on guitar, so it's this real dissonant kind of guitar over this Latin rock groove. And she heard it and she went, I think I could hear that. Yeah. And as it turned out, that tune was also recorded by Madonna. Oh, okay. Who's Joe Henry's sister-in-law.
Really? Okay, yeah. I didn't know that. All right.
He's married to her sister, and she took this tune called Stop, which is like this kind of very dark, tango-ish kind of thing, and turned it into another pop song that really isn't that great. But she had a hit with it and made him some money. Yeah. But Tish said, we won't do the Madonna version, but I love the Joe Henry version. And we, again, Eric did his take on the recording. It's drums and timbales and stuff like that, and maybe 2 drum sets recorded. Eric adapted, and it came up with a groove that worked, and drives the thing ahead. And so Tish wound up doing a Joe Henry song.
Nice, that's cool.
It's and it was the same thing with Eden had heard "You Must Believe in Spring" before. She was familiar with it. She actually, when we suggested it, she immediately sent me a transcription of a Bill Evans version of it.
Okay.
You mean this version? I was like, no, not this version.
Yeah,
it's like really complex and stuff like that. But again, it's her background. She knew. Yeah. You know, so she knew the song. But I said, look, let's listen to a few different versions of it. And we worked with it for a while, found the right key, found out that, all the intro is her and guitar. And say it works better if the rhythm section comes out for this verse. And then we'll come back in after this verse. So it really changes. There's a lot of dynamic changes and instrumentation, like, stops and starts in the middle of it. But we wound up with a version of it that's just like, it's heartbreaking. It's gorgeous. There's one, oh my God, the third verse, when angry words drown out the music of the spheres and children face a world that's far beyond their years. Yeah, and the whole thing comes like, you must believe in spring and love, like that. But I mean, those lines right there, I remember when I heard them in the playback, I was like, choked up, Be strong. Oh my God. It was, I mean, and especially really any time, the line, children face a world that's far beyond their years. Oh, geez. Yeah. But it's different. It's a different thing for us to do a ballad like that. And to play it almost like a jazz ballad, but not quite. In the background to all of that, we were also recording another +1 with a chromatic harmonica player, Ralph Rosen, from Boston, who plays chromatic harmonica and then also blues harp as well.
Wow.
He's an old friend of mine. He used to play the Hotel series once in a while.
Yeah.
And we asked him, hey, would you be interested? We sent him some tracks. I'd love to. He came down and sat in with us once. He'd love to. Gino wrote 7 or 8 new pieces for him.
Wow.
So the whole album is all like new compositions by Gino because he heard that sound.
Yeah.
And that's kind of very kind of dark, kind of atmospheric sounding stuff. And then there's one tune that there's a few like funk. There's a couple of funk things that almost sound like Little Feetish.
Yeah.
And then there's one tune that Gino wrote that we wanted it to sound like a 70s sitcom theme. Eric, we played through it a couple of times, and Eric said, I hear Quincy Jones.
Yeah,
I hear a Quincy Jones thing for this.
Yeah.
So he said, let's not play it like jazz guys. Let's do it as if we're recording, doing a
sitcom.
And Eric actually came up with an arrangement. During this section of the tune, play this line. During this, Gino played this, and it works. And it sounds like something that could be, and because it's got the harmonica in it, reminded me of the Sanford and Son theme.
Oh yeah, okay.
So I suggested the title. I said let's give a shout out to Lamont Sanford and call it Lamont's Revenge.
Oh yeah,
because Lamont took a lot of crap from Fred. I said this will be Lamont's Revenge.
Yeah.
So it's Lamont's Revenge,
nice.
And it's a 3-minute pop tune that could be a sitcom theme.
Wow,
but it's there.
That's cool. You guys get to do some cool stuff.
Then there's also in parallel to that, Gino had contacted our buddy John McKenna, who's a great tenor sax player.
Yeah.
Studied with Joe Lovano and had played with John Allmark's big band. He's just a great tenor player.
Yeah.
And asked if he might want to be, involved in something. So he said yes. He brought a couple of tunes that he wrote.
Yeah.
And Gino wrote some stuff sound totally different than the other stuff that we're recording. It sounds almost like a John Scofield, Joe Lovano album.
Okay.
And it actually sounds like a jazz album.
Yeah,
you know? Like a naughty modern jazz album, you know?
All right.
Where like Eric has to play like, you know, and I have to play fast walking lines and, you know, that kind of stuff. And Gino wrote chords that no one can figure out how to play. But it's definitely like a more complex jazz sound as opposed to what we were doing before. But it's still the band's sound.
Yeah.
It still sounds like us.
Yeah.
So that's in the can. That's going to be eventually mastered.
Nice. Yeah, you guys stay busy.
It's nice. And then we actually put out the word every once in a while that the band in the studio can be hired. So if someone has a project that they want to record or a demo or a tune or like songs that they want to record or something like that, they can hire us and the studio and the recording.
Okay. Like if you're just a songwriter and you want to have something.
And we've actually had a few people that, you know, are interested that we've been working with.
That's great.
It's time to put the word out again. You know, because why not?
Yeah.
Why not? We've got the studio with the time. If someone wants to here's what we do and thinks that, you know, it could work in there for their material, whatever they want to use it for, we'll do it.
Yeah. You guys just have the
hire us,
pedigree to just be able to do it.
Yeah, and the thing is, it helps. It's based on the idea that, all right, now maybe by now people know what we are and what we do. And that's starting to happen a little bit more. And this might also be a way of extending that. That's like, this is another part of the brand. The brand is original music and cool, you know, collaborations with guests.
Yeah.
And also we do the, you know,
like
hired professionals as well.
Yeah. No, that's right.
And we'll do weddings.
Like helping. Oh, yeah.
We did a wedding this summer.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's good. Yeah.
People I heard us at an art gallery and said, we want you to do our daughter's wedding.
I could see you do that. Yeah.
Sure. Why not?
Yeah. Cool. But with this record with Eden, what do you have planned for that?
Well, we've got a couple of shows booked. Everybody's really busy,
right?
but we do have some things coming up. We're doing at the I think it's the 22nd of December.
Yeah.
We're playing at the Blue Room.
Yep.
And we'll have both Eden and Tish do a set. We'll do two sets. One set with Eden, one set with Tish.
Yeah.
For that. And then February 9th, I believe it is. Yeah, we'll be playing at Chan's and doing 1 2-hour show with both singers.
Oh, cool.
So it'll be some Evening Sky, you know, quartet stuff, then bring up a singer, then bring up another one, and, you know.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Over the course of a 2-hour show, we'll do that. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
I think we're playing soon at the Music Room with Tish Adams, and we'll be doing some other dates at the Blue Room with Tish as well.
Yeah, that's a cool spot.
Yeah, and then we have the usual, you know, things at our home at the Parlor.
Yeah, like your
second Saturday of the month, and that's always they've been great to us.
Yeah.
And I get a Monday at the Red Door every once in a while. It's supposed to be a trio, but once in a while I'll bring in Evening Sky.
Yeah.
And we actually did one a few weeks ago, and a room full of people were actually sitting and listening to our stuff, which is something, you know.
Yeah.
Even the ballads.
Yeah, that's good.
That's so you know it's not like we're like we're taking off or whatever, but we definitely feel like we have more traction now that people know who we are. Yeah. Or starting to know where we are, or at least knowing that we might be something cool.
Yeah. And
might be worth checking out. It's not everybody's cup of tea. We know it's a hard sell as far as booking.
Yeah.
That's the thing, because where do you book a band like that?
Yeah.
And outside of the Parlor and like the Blue Room and the Red Door and stuff like that, we don't want to necessarily try to get ourselves in every bar where people are playing it, because we're not that kind of a band.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah, and you know, so we wanted two things we would love to accomplish. One would be to have someone be able to represent us and work on getting us booked in places that are not bars, and probably outside of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be to do more stuff like that. both as a quartet and then maybe with a guest here and there.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Yeah. We don't want to necessarily always go out with a singer because we don't want to become as great as the singers are, as we love playing with them.
Yeah.
They understand it too, that we don't want to become known as the band that has this singer or that singer.
Yeah. No.
But we also want people to know that not only can we do this original stuff with the quartet,
yeah,
but if we play behind this person or this person, you get another whole dimension to what we're doing.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of what the thought behind the band.
I mean, that's the thinking, and in some ways it helps establish an identity, which I'm actually very proud that we have established now an identity and a sound. But it's everybody realizes it's a tough sell. It's live music is it's for people to come in and listen to live music where they just sit and listen, that's a hard sell. And with a band that's not a straight ahead jazz band or not a straight ahead country band or not a straight ahead, funk band or roots band, but that combines all that stuff, it's a tough sell. I always tell people, even if you think you won't like it, you'll probably like it.
Yeah.
And it's not like something for everyone. It's, there's some people it's not going to be their cup of tea, but more people who have heard us, we've had the experience very often where people heard it and say, wow, I didn't think I was going to like this, but I like this. Or, I don't really like jazz, but I love this stuff.
Yeah.
Or, that reminded me of this. What was that tune you played? Well, that was one of ours. Well, really? I thought, we hear that a lot, which, so if we're grabbing people by the ears like that and getting them to the point where they say, what I really like about, and we hear this a lot, what I really like about the thing is you guys have a very particular, identifiable, and very listenable sound.
Yes.
You got your own thing.
Yeah.
That's always been my thing as a player, but to have a whole band like that where everybody's of the same mind, and we've actually started to achieve that.
Yeah.
And people are recognizing it.
Yeah.
That I like, when people actually recognize it unprompted.
Yeah.
Sometimes I prompt them. They say so what do you?
Yeah.
But it's happening unprompted, and that's really gratifying to everybody because that's what we're going for.
Yeah. But especially for the instrumental stuff that you're to be identifiable with that, it takes a certain something, it takes all those years of you finding your own sound and what Gino's worked on and Eric's recording and his set, the fact that he uses that certain drum and but that you can hear that and be like, oh, this is without having a vocalist that, usually it can be what identifies a band, or separates them, So obviously you're working with these different vocalists at times, but being able to carve that out is definitely something you guys should be proud of. And
the thing is, we feel comfortable doing some stuff with a singer or a horn player because we also know we've got the other thing pretty well developed. Yeah. So it's parallel tracks. Yeah. In some ways, it makes it distinctive, but then again, everybody knows it's always an uphill climb to get that stuff heard and to find places where you can play. And none of us is young, so that makes a difference. Yeah, we've run into that. Really? We have. There's places we just don't get booked because.
Oh really? Wow.
It's just. We're not young and good looking. It's
you're old and good looking.
Well, Eric is. Yeah. But you do run into that. I'd be interested to find out what happens when you get out of town. And if there were some contact, the rare occasions where we've done that. I think last summer we played a thing in New Bedford. A town festival where they had music all over town. Yeah. And one of the people who was involved in doing that was Neil Weiss from Whaling City Sound. Yeah. Which is a jazz label based out of New Bedford. And he had us play one thing, and he hung out where we were playing and really liked it. And said all the things that I'm saying. You guys definitely have a great, real identifiable sound. great players, all that kind of stuff. So, and people there liked it. And when we've been in places outside of the usual bars, I mean, the places that support us regularly, they're great. And we're so grateful for them. But when we've gone to other places and done our thing, like on this series or at an art gallery or whatever, and people who wouldn't normally come to the parlor or the Red Door see us there, where they're just sitting without a bar and like it. We've seen that a few times, like New Bedford. We did in Plymouth, the Aspire Center, Art Center. They have like a front room series. We did that, and people like that.
Cool.
So I'd like to really have the opportunity to have someone find places for us that beyond what we're doing and outside of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
Just to see, see if it would translate. I think it would, because now everybody feels a lot more confident in what we're doing than we did, like even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So, I would love to see that happen. The real trick is going to be to find someone who, knows the business and has the time to help us do that, because none of us have a lot of time to do that.
Yeah.
And I really think that most places don't want to hear directly from the band.
Yeah, or there's if you have they get kind of like third party
emails and texts every day. Right. So somebody who really knows the band, knows the business, knows where knows where we would like to play, and has the time to explore that. That would be one of my goals, is to find that person that could do that. But nobody has. Everybody's realistic in their expectations too, because it's we've been in the business too long to not be realistic.
Yeah. Up to this point, what would you say has been your greatest musical accomplishment?
I'm very proud of a number of bands that I played in, like Evening Sky, the band with Steve DeConti. There was a funk band I was in with Dave Tannery and Vinnie Pagano in the early 80s that was Pisser. It was just a great band. I would have to say, though, that the opportunity, what I was able to do with the series at Aspire, 7 years that ran. A gig, for any gig to run 7 years, and to get away with playing like real jazz in a hotel bar for 7 years with a different band every week. And to keep the level of music very high. And to have it be like a go-to place for local jazz fans. Just like Allery was when I was a kid. When I was in college and thought, wow, what a cool place, And people actually came to that for that reason. They knew that that's where it was happening. And then in the middle of that, to have people who were staying at the hotel who just came down from their room because they heard it and say, I don't really like jazz, but I love this. What were you guys doing there? To have those kind of interactions with people, because so often people go, oh, jazz, that's cool. So to have that and at the same time be doing it with great players. I get to play with Duke Robillard. I get to play with Greg Abate. I get to play with Dan Moretti. I get to play with Deborah Mann, Sean Montero, Grace Sargent.
Wow.
Grace Sargent wanted to sit in. Local people, Mike Renzi. I got to play with Ted Casher, who was like, I heard about as a legend when my brother was in Berkeley, and I got to play a gig with him. Dennis McCarthy, the great R&B singer, to be able to play with him and almost stop time by doing a ballad one night at the slowest tempo you could possibly imagine, and have the audience just with you all the way. To be able to do that, and then next week you've got a chance to do it again. So to do that over 7 years, that was a great opportunity. I'm not one to say things about myself like this, but I'm proud of what I accomplished there like that. And it really is difficult for me. Anybody who knows me knows how difficult it is for me to utter that phrase. But because I'm pathologically self-deprecating, but I'm really proud of that.
Yes.
And also what it did for me musically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and people look back at it as a big, you know, a cool thing that happened.
Yeah.
On the Rhode Island music scene. So, you know, when you figure, you know, other things that have happened here, you know, it's nice to be a little chunk of that.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, this has been fantastic, Joe. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
man. This is fun.
Lights in the harbor, they don't shine for me. I'm like a lost ship adrift on the sea of heartbreak and lost love, loneliness, memories of your caress. How divine, how I wish you were mine again, my dear. I'm on a sea of tears, a sea of heartbreak. How did I lose you? Oh, where did I fail? Why did you leave me? Always to sail the sea of heartbreak and lost love, loneliness, memories of your caress. So divine, how I wish you were mine again, my dear. I'm on a sea of tears, a sea of heartbreak. Oh, what I'd give to sail to the shore